Welcome to the deep dive. Um, you're here because you really value getting to the core of things, absorbing knowledge efficiently. And that's exactly what we're setting out to do today. Take a deep dive into the psychology. That drives our financial decisions. Think of it as your express route to understanding, a really crucial element of building wealth. It's the often overlooked mindset behind it all.
And to do that, we'll be exploring the insights from the book, The Psychology of Money, along with a comprehensive summary to truly understand why we make the financial choices we do. And what's fascinating here is this central idea of the book, achieving success with money, isn't just about, crunching numbers
Yeah,
or having some innate intelligence.
right.
It's much more about grasping our own emotional landscape and the sometimes illogical behaviors that shape our financial lives.
Absolutely. Our mission today is to pull out the most practical lessons from this material, things you can immediately apply to your own financial world to make better decisions without feeling overwhelmed
Mm.
by jargon or endless details.
And to get straight to the heart of why this matters, just consider this surprising thought. Someone with a remarkably high IQ might actually be less successful at managing their money than someone who possesses a strong understanding of their own emotions and tendencies. It makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with a fundamental idea, the book introduces right off the bat, no one's crazy. What this highlights is how profoundly our individual life experiences shape the way we view and interact with money.
Right.
Just think for a moment. Someone who grew up in a household where money was always a struggle will inevitably have a very different perspective
Yeah.
compared to someone raised in an environment of financial security.
That's precisely it. What might seem like a completely irrational financial move to one person can be perfectly logical to another when you consider the unique lens through which they see the world, a lens colored by their personal history and the circumstances they've navigated.
And this is so relevant to you, our listener, because it encourages a bit of understanding, not just for the financial choices of others, but also for your own.
Hmm.
Sometimes those things we do with money
Yeah.
that don't quite add up on paper are actually deeply rooted in experiences we've had.
Hmm.
Recognizing that can be the crucial first step toward making more conscious and informed decisions moving forward. Think about a time you judged someone's spending. Now, considering their possible background, does that shift your perspective at all? Applying this to yourself, can you identify any of your own financial habits? That might stem from past experiences, even if they don't make perfect logical sense in your life today.
It also underscores why it's so important to avoid making snap judgments about other people's financial behavior. What might seem illogical on the surface could very well have a perfectly rational, albeit deeply personal foundation.
Now, the book also dives into the unpredictable nature of financial outcomes. With the chapter Luck and Risk, it really brings home the point that both success and failure often have elements of chance involved, something we don't always fully appreciate.
What's fascinating here is the example the book uses, Bill Gates. Obviously, he worked incredibly hard and possessed exceptional talent. But the book points out he also had a significant stroke of luck in attending one of the very few high schools in the entire country that had a computer in the late 1960s. That early access provided him with a massive and undeniable advantage.
Right. It's such a crucial point because it doesn't diminish the importance of hard work and dedication, but it does serve as a valuable caution against simply trying to replicate the paths of those who have achieved extraordinary success without also acknowledging the role that good fortune might have played in their individual stories.
Exactly. We need to be really careful about attributing all success solely to skill and all failure entirely to a lack of competence. Recognizing this interplay between luck and risk allows us to develop a more balanced and ultimately more realistic outlook on our own financial journeys.
Moving on, there's a really powerful chapter called Never Enough, and this delves into the very real and pervasive danger of insatiable greed. It's a trap that the book illustrates even those who have already amassed incredible wealth can fall into.
Yeah, the example of Rajat Gupta is particularly sobering. Here was a man who had reached the absolute pinnacle of the business world, a billionaire by all accounts, yet he risked everything through insider trading, seemingly driven by a relentless and ultimately self-destructive desire for even more.
Yeah, it really makes you stop and think about your own personal definition of enough, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Where exactly is that line for you? It's not about lacking ambition, but rather about having a clear and grounded understanding of what truly matters to you. And when you've reached a point of genuine financial security and contentment, what are your personal financial goals? And what level of wealth? will truly provide you with the sense of security and the freedom you're seeking. Defining that enough is so critical for avoiding the kind of endless pursuit that can lead to really reckless behavior.
This raises an important question for everyone listening.
Right.
What are your personal financial goals? And what level of wealth will truly provide you? With the sense of security and freedom you desire, defining enough is crucial for avoiding the endless pursuit of more. That can lead to reckless behavior.
Now let's shift gears and talk about a more positive and absolutely foundational concept, confounding compounding. The book emphasizes that this is arguably the single most powerful force at play
Yeah.
in the entire world of finance.
Absolutely. And the real magic here is the element of time. The example of Warren Buffett perfectly illustrates this principle. While he is undoubtedly a brilliant investor with incredible skill, a significant portion of his vast wealth can be attributed simply to the fact that he has been consistently investing and allowing his returns to grow for over 7 decades. It's the
Wow.
classic snowball effect in action. One of the biggest challenges with compounding is that the early gains can feel really insignificant, which unfortunately leads many people to abandon their efforts prematurely. This highlights a key psychological hurdle: our natural human tendency to prioritize immediate gratification over those potentially much larger long-term rewards. Recognizing this inherent bias is absolutely crucial for staying the course
Yeah.
and allowing compounding to truly work its magic.
So the clear takeaway for you is this. Start investing as early as you possibly can. Be patient and really let the power of compounding work its wonders over the long haul. It might not feel like you're making huge strides in the initial stages, but those small, consistent gains really do add up exponentially over time.
What's fascinating here is how often people significantly underestimate the sheer power of compounding, precisely because it operates as a slow burn.
Right.
It demands a considerable amount of discipline and a truly long-term perspective, which can be quite challenging to maintain in a world that so often emphasizes and rewards instant gratification.
The book then goes on to make a really important distinction between getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. These, it turns out, are actually two quite distinct sets of skills and mindsets.
That's absolutely right. Accumulating wealth often involves a certain degree of risk-taking, being opportunistic when chances arise, and perhaps even exhibiting a bit of boldness.
Yeah.
However, the process of preserving that wealth, once you've attained it, requires a completely different approach, one that is much more focused on humility and a rigorous, consistent management of potential risks.
The key principles for staying wealthy, as outlined in the book, are surprisingly practical. Consistently avoiding unnecessary risks. Cultivating a healthy sense of financial prudence, almost a form of financial paranoia. Always being prepared for unexpected events, and building in a significant margin of safety in your financial plans. Much like having a substantial emergency savings fund. Think of it like this. If you're planning a road trip and expect it to take 5 hours, you might build in an extra hour or two for unexpected traffic or detours. The financial margin of safety is similar. It's having extra resources or conservative estimates to handle life's financial detours.
If we connect this back to the bigger picture, we can really see how building wealth is much more akin to running a marathon than a quick sprint. The strategies and the mindset that help you surge ahead initially might not be the same ones that ensure your long-term financial security and stability.
This naturally leads us to the intriguing idea that tails drive everything. This is a really interesting concept. That highlights how significant wealth is often generated by a relatively small number of truly massive successes, what the book refers to as outlier events or tails of the distribution.
Consider the stock market as a prime example. The vast majority of the overall returns in the market often come from just a handful of truly exceptional companies, such as Amazon or Apple. The crucial lesson here is that you absolutely don't need to be right about every single investment decision you make.
Exactly. The real key is to ensure that when you do experience a win, those wins are substantial enough to significantly offset any losses you might incur along the way. It's really about having a few really big wins, rather than striving for a consistent, but ultimately less impactful string of small ones. This raises an important question about how we evaluate our own financial performance. Are we perhaps focusing too much on the frequency of our successes, rather than the overall magnitude and impact of our biggest wins?
This raises an important question about how we evaluate our own financial performance. Are we focusing too much on the frequency of our successes, rather than the magnitude and impact of our biggest wins?
Now let's talk about what the book posits as the ultimate goal of all this financial endeavor: Freedom is the ultimate goal. The argument here is that the most truly valuable thing that money can buy for you isn't a collection of fancy possessions, but rather control over your own most precious resource, your time.
What's so compelling about this perspective is the fundamental shift in focus. Instead of solely chasing after material luxury goods, the emphasis shifts to the ability to live your life on your own terms, to have the autonomy to choose when you work, what you work on, and with whom you collaborate. That level of control and flexibility is a form of wealth that often leads to far greater and more lasting happiness than simply accumulating more stuff.
This really resonates, I think, with a lot of people on a deep level. The core idea that true wealth isn't just about the things you own, but about the autonomy and control it provides over your daily life. That's a really powerful aha moment.
Yeah.
If we connect this back to the idea of never enough, we can clearly see how the relentless pursuit of endless material possessions can actually detract from achieving that ultimate goal of genuine freedom and control over your time.
If we connect this back to never enough, we can see how the pursuit of endless material possessions can actually detract from the ultimate goal of freedom and control.
The book then introduces a concept called the man-in-the-car paradox. And I think this is something that a lot of people can probably relate to on some level. It's the common misconception that we often purchase expensive things with the underlying belief that they will impress others and elevate our social standing.
But the reality, as the book astutely points out, is that when someone sees a fancy, expensive car, for example, they mostly just notice and register the car itself. They're generally not sitting there admiring the person behind the wheel as much as the owner might perhaps hope they are.
It's a bit counterintuitive when you really think about it, isn't it? We often believe that these outward displays of wealth will somehow elevate our status or garner admiration in the eyes of others. But in reality, it's often the object itself that captures their attention, not necessarily us as individuals. The underlying lesson here is that true, lasting wealth, the kind that provides genuine security and freedom, is often unseen and resides in your savings and investments.
This leads us directly into the subsequent chapter. Wealth is what you don't see. And the fundamental, yet often overlooked advice: to simply save money. The book strongly emphasizes that being truly wealthy isn't about owning a sprawling mansion or driving an exotic Italian sports car. It's fundamentally about having a solid foundation of savings, well-thought-out investments, and overall financial security that isn't necessarily visible to the outside world. Think about your own social media feed for a moment. It's likely filled with images of outward displays of wealth.
Right.
This chapter serves as a valuable reminder that true financial strength lies in what isn't being broadcast, your underlying savings and investments.
And this is such an empowering message for everyone because it highlights the fact that you don't necessarily need to have a massive multi-figure income to begin building wealth. The real and often overlooked key is consistently spending less money than you earn and diligently saving and investing the difference over time.
It's a simple, yet profoundly impactful truth. So often we get caught up in the pursuit of trying to dramatically increase our income, but the book wisely reminds us that actively controlling our spending habits is just as, if not even more, critical for establishing a rock-solid financial foundation.
Now, the book also astutely acknowledges that we humans are not always perfectly rational beings, especially when it comes to our emotions and how they influence our decisions about money. And that's where this idea of reasonable rationale comes into play.
Exactly. It's perfectly acceptable and often even more sustainable in the long run to make financial decisions based on our emotions within reasonable bounds if it ultimately helps us. Stick to our overarching financial plan. For example, someone might consciously choose to completely avoid investing in the stock market altogether because the inherent volatility, meaning the price can go up and down quite a bit in the short term, makes them feel excessively anxious. Even though on paper and from a purely rational standpoint, stocks have historically tended to offer better long-term returns compared to other asset classes.
The crucial lesson here is that a financial plan that you can actually stick with consistently over time, even if it's not the absolute most theoretically perfect, or optimal plan on paper, is far more valuable and effective than a highly complex or restrictive plan that you're likely to abandon at the very first sign of discomfort or difficulty. It's all about finding what is reasonable and sustainable for your own individual personality, risk tolerance, and emotional well-being. This also highlights the importance of truly understanding your own personal risk tolerance and any inherent emotional biases you might have when making financial decisions.
Right.
A financial plan that causes you constant stress and anxiety is ultimately unlikely to be successful in the long run, no matter how theoretically sound it might be.
This also highlights the importance of understanding your own personal risk tolerance and emotional biases when making financial decisions. A plan that causes you constant stress and anxiety is unlikely to be successful in the long run.
Given that the future is inherently uncertain and often throws us unexpected challenges, the book includes a chapter aptly titled Surprise, which underscores the fundamental importance of proactively planning for the inevitable unexpected events. This directly ties into the related idea of building in room for error in all our financial plans.
The book strongly advocates for the need to build in a significant margin of safety in all of your financial plans and projections.
Okay.
For instance, if you're projecting potential growth. For your business, it's generally much wiser to underestimate those projections rather than overestimate them, allowing you to have a built-in buffer to absorb any unforeseen negative circumstances that might arise.
This principle can be readily applied to our personal finances as well. Maintaining a well-funded emergency savings account, strategically diversifying your investment portfolio across different asset classes, and generally avoiding the assumption that everything in life will go exactly according to your initial plan. Life inevitably has a way of throwing us unexpected curveballs, and being financially prepared to handle those surprises can truly make all the difference. In your long-term financial well-being, it's about acknowledging the inherent limits of our ability to accurately predict the future and proactively building resilience into our overall financial strategies.
It's about acknowledging the limits of our ability to predict the future and building resilience into our financial strategies.
Another really important point that the book emphasizes is that you'll change over time.
Right.
Our financial goals, our priorities in life, and even our fundamental values related to money are all quite likely to evolve and shift as we progress through different stages of our lives.
This is precisely why it's so crucial to avoid making overly rigid and inflexible, long-term financial decisions early on that don't allow for a reasonable degree of adaptability. As your life circumstances inevitably change, what seems incredibly important to you in your 20s, for example, might be entirely different and hold a much lower priority when you reach your 40s or 60s. If we connect this back to the idea of reasonable, rational, we can clearly see how. A perfectly rational and highly optimized financial plan that you created at one specific point in time might gradually become quite unreasonable and ultimately unsustainable as your life circumstances and personal priorities evolve.
So the key advice here is to build a degree of inherent adaptability and flexibility into your overall financial planning, consciously recognizing that your individual circumstances and your overarching life goals will likely shift and evolve over the course of your life.
If we connect this to reasonable rational, we can see how a rigid, perfectly rational plan, created at one point in time, might become unreasonable and unsustainable as your life changes.
The book also serves as a helpful reminder that nothing's free in the world of finance. Every single financial decision we make involves some form of trade-off, whether it's immediately obvious to us or not.
For instance, investing in the stock market has the potential for generating significant long-term returns, but the inherent cost that you absolutely have to be willing to accept in exchange for that potential upside is the very real possibility of experiencing short-term losses and periods of market volatility.
Wow.
Fully understanding these often implicit costs and trade-offs is absolutely essential for making informed and well-considered financial decisions.
It's really about being consciously aware of the price you are ultimately paying, whether that price is in terms of time, the level of risk you're taking on, or the potential opportunity cost of choosing one financial path over another in your pursuit of achieving your specific financial goals and being willing to accept that inherent price. This also encourages a more thoughtful and less impulsive approach to making financial decisions, rather than simply chasing after potential gains without carefully considering the associated risks and underlying costs.
This also encourages a more thoughtful approach to financial decisions, rather than just chasing potential gains without considering the associated risks and costs.
In a chapter titled You and Me, the book briefly but importantly touches on the fundamental fact that there is absolutely no one-size-fits-all approach. When it comes to the often complex world of personal finance, different individual life circumstances, financial goals, and risk tolerances necessitate the adoption of different and tailored financial strategies.
For example, a young investor who has a long investment time horizon ahead of them might be in a financial position to comfortably take on a significantly higher level of investment risk compared to someone who is much closer to retirement and therefore needs a greater degree of financial stability and a more predictable stream of income. Recognizing and respecting these significant individual differences is absolutely key to developing a financial plan that is truly appropriate for your unique situation.
Right.
This also really underscores the considerable value of seeking personalized and tailored financial advice from a qualified professional who can take your specific circumstances and goals into careful account.
It really reinforces the crucial idea that the financial advice that might be perfectly suitable and effective for one person might not be at all appropriate or beneficial for your own unique situation. And therefore, it's always critically important to tailor your financial strategies and decisions to your own individual circumstances, your specific goals, and your personal risk tolerance.
This also underscores the value of seeking personalized financial advice that takes your specific circumstances into account.
The book then delves into our inherent psychological biases with a chapter called The Seduction of Pessimism. It effectively explains why we humans tend to give a disproportionately greater weight and significance to negative news and potential bad outcomes compared to positive news and potential gains, even if the long-term trends are generally quite positive.
It's a well-documented psychological quirk. Negative events tend to have a far more profound emotional impact on us than positive ones of a similar magnitude. In the often volatile world of finance, this inherent bias can unfortunately lead to an overemphasis on potential market downturns and economic recessions, while potentially neglecting the powerful forces of long-term growth and innovation. So the key lesson here is to actively try and maintain a balanced perspective, honestly acknowledging any potential short-term risks, while also remaining reasonably optimistic about the overall long-term progress and potential for growth. Try not to let excessive fear and undue pessimism unduly cloud your judgment when making important financial decisions. If we connect this back to the concept that tails drive everything, we can begin to see how an excessive and unwavering focus on potential negative tails, those extreme negative events, can inadvertently prevent us from fully participating in and benefiting from the significant upside potential offered by the positive tails, those rare but massively impactful positive events.
So the lesson here is to try and maintain a balanced perspective, acknowledging short-term risks while remaining optimistic about long-term progress. Don't let fear and pessimism cloud your judgment. If we connect this to tails drive everything, we can see how an overemphasis on potential negative tails can prevent us from participating in the upside potential of the positive tails.
If we connect this to tails drive everything, we can see how an overemphasis on potential negative tails can prevent us from participating in the upside potential of the positive tails.
Finally, the book touches on a really important aspect of financial decision-making in a chapter titled When You'll Believe Anything, which explores the underlying reasons why people are often so susceptible to various financial myths, get-rich-quick schemes, and outright scams.
It often boils down to a fundamental human desire for simple and straightforward answers, coupled with the powerful allure of achieving easy and rapid financial success. When financial matters seem complex, uncertain, or even intimidating, we can be particularly drawn to narratives that offer a false sense of clarity and the tempting promise of effortless wealth, even when those narratives are not grounded in sound financial principles or factual data.
The crucial takeaway here is to cultivate a healthy and unwavering sense of skepticism and to always prioritize seeking out factual data, reliable information from credible sources, and sound financial advice before making any significant financial decisions. As the old adage goes, if something sounds too good to be true, it very likely is. This really reinforces the ongoing importance of continuous financial literacy and the development of strong critical thinking skills when navigating the often complex and sometimes misleading world of money and finance.
This reinforces the importance of financial literacy and critical thinking when navigating the complex world of money.
So to bring together the threads of our deep dive into the psychology of money, the core message really boils down to this. Effectively managing your personal finances is far more about developing a deep understanding of your own psychological tendencies and behavioral patterns than it is about simply mastering complex mathematical formulas or chasing fleeting market trends. Building sustainable wealth is a long-term endeavor that fundamentally relies on consistently developing good financial habits, exercising considerable patience, and making smart, behaviorally sound decisions, rather than impulsively chasing after the latest get-rich-quick opportunities.
And to reiterate some of the key takeaways for you, our listener, always remember the incredible and often underestimated power of compounding. That works its magic over extended periods of time. The critical importance of diligently avoiding unnecessary financial risks, and the ever-present trap of insatiable greed. And that, ultimately, the true and most valuable goal of effectively managing your money is to provide you with greater freedom, increased autonomy, and more control over your most precious and finite resource, your time.
Finally, here's a provocative thought for you to take away and perhaps ponder in the days and weeks ahead. Consider one specific financial belief that you currently hold to be true. Where did that particular belief originally come from? What concrete evidence actually supports its validity in your own life? And based on the various insights and perspectives we've explored during our deep dive today, how might you begin to reevaluate the fundamental soundness and applicability of that long-held financial belief? Perhaps a little personal introspection into your own unique psychology of money might just be the most valuable next step you can take
Mm.
on your financial journey. Thanks so much for joining us today on The Deep Dive.